wants to play this fair game of land go, removal spell, land go. I think he wants to accelerate to get to on Master of the Fells ahead of schedule, to get to Olivia Voldaren ahead of schedule, and just press his advantage if he can. Mana acceleration, oftentimes key in the green mirrors.
Yeah, well, Huntmaster is an interesting card in this matchup. I'm not sure how good it actually is, because it doesn't fight well with any of Huey's creatures. You know, it gets outclassed by most of his plays. Kiyan does need to win the game at some point, and Huntmaster is pretty good at doing that. But I think he has a lot of cards that can win the game, and I think what answers he has is more important than the proactive things he has. I think he'd much rather see something like Olivia Voldaren than actually see Huntmaster of the Fells.
And we're going to see Nourain take a mulligan here, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him take some aggressive mulligans in this matchup, because he knows exactly what he's against. He's working on perfect information as far as deck lists are concerned, so he knows exactly what kind of hands he needs to try to win with. You know, Rakdos returns hands, those are not going to cut it here. You know, Garruk Primal Hunter hands, no, I'm not interested in that. Even a hand that involves Thragtusk, not you for this matchup. I need a hand that interacts with my opponent early and often.
Rakdos' return, interesting you mentioned the card. Not normally good. I do think if he has a hand with a lot of removal spells, a Rakdos return can be pretty good. If he can like Bonfire Jensen and then Rakdos return him, if he can get Huey's hand, once he gets Huey's hand empty and board cleared for the very first time, then Kiyan's in a great spot.
Yeah.
The question is can he ever get there?
Yeah. Jensen going to keep his 7, and you know, the thing about Jensen's deck is that it has so many hands that it can keep, that it's not a deck that does mulligan often. It is a deck that does mulligan poorly, but it's not a deck that does mulligan very often. So you're oftentimes going to see him keep a 7-card hand. You know, maybe keep, you know, not the best of hands, but his deck does have the ability to, quote, get there. So you're going to see a 6-card hand here from Nourain.
Well, you mentioned that Ramp is one of those archetypes that I think is one of the archetypes that mulligans the worst in Magic. Because when you mana accelerate, you have to hit your land drop and have the accelerant. It's way easier to do that when you have more cards.
So he's going to start off with an Arbor Elf, Will Jensen. There is a Tragic Slip over there in Nourain's hand. Wouldn't be surprised to see him pull the trigger on that. Do a little trading of 1 for 1 early and often, so that Jensen can never get a storm built up, for lack of a better term. Here is that Tragic Slip, a Rootbound Crag, and Nourain will pass the turn back.
Well, Nourain had an interesting decision there. He had a Bonfire of the Damned in his hand as well, and I think he wasn't sure whether or not he wanted to Tragic Slip immediately or get greedy and Bonfire for 1 on turn 3.
Okay.
He went with the Tragic Slip. It's interesting because while, you know, it's really important to get those mana creatures, he also needs to make sure, you know, if he spends all his early turns just removing mana creatures, you know, Huey can't just play a Hydra on turn 5.
Yeah. That is something that is available to him. So Nourain does have that Bonfire. He does not cast it for 1, so Jensen's going to get in for 1 with that Avacyn's Pilgrim. Here is an Elvish Archdruid and going to pass the turn back. You see Nourain does have a Putrefy in his hand at the ready to take care of that Archdruid, but he opts not to. Dreadbore the draw here for Nourain.
I really like Nourain's draws here. I think this is what he wants to be doing in the matchup. I think I'm not the biggest fan of that Tragic Slip early on. I think, you know, this turn he could have done something like Bonfire for 1 and Tragic Slip. But either way, he is adequately answering all of Huey's plays.
Here's an Elvish Visionary, gonna cantrip for Jensen, does draw him a land. In for 1 comes the Avacyn's Pilgrim. Jensen going to play a land and pass the turn back, so he's up to 4 mana, as we're being informed right now. For those of you curious about our Sealed Classic, 166 players have showed up for that, coming out for the Mythic Madness this weekend. So thank you to all of those players who have joined us for our Sealed Classic here in New Jersey.
All right, so what we see with Nourain, he's done a good job of taking care of all these mana creatures. Now what he's hoping is that his deck is going to be able to turn the corner. What I mean by that is make a play like an Olivia, like a Huntmaster, something that can actually start to win the game now. He has stopped, you know, Huey hasn't resolved anything really big right away. However, like I said before, Huey can't always just play 5 lands and tap them and make, you know, a Wolfie or Silver. That's what you see here.
So, Nourain looking for a top deck. He knocks the top of his deck. Let's see what he found. That is a Thragtusk, which Thragtusk tussles with a lot of things.
But one of them it doesn't tussle with is Wolfie or Silverheart.
That is correct.
Remember, Wolfie or Silverheart right now is just a 4/4. Will be at least an 8/8 once Huey pairs it with something.
How about another Silverheart? So now those are 12 12s. Thragtusk going to fall underneath the bus against this and now Huey gonna play a Temple Garden, gonna pass the turn back, and this is exactly what you mentioned, in which Nourain got a draw that he wants to have, but Jensen can just do this. He can just find lands, cast his spells as normal, and put out 2 12/12s like he has here with double Wolf or Silverheart, and say, hey, Kiyan, what can you do about this? Because Maelstrom Pulse, that card does not exist.
Wolfir Silver was basically one of the all-stars out of Innistrad block constructed. The card was almost unanswerable in the format.
That card dominated Pro Tour, Absence Restored, and
right.
Barcelona all day, every day. Arguably the best card in that format to go along with Bonfire of the Damned. As you see Nourain with just 3 cards in his hand, Jensen draws his card for the turn. You don't know if he has the Mondo combo of Garrick, Caller of Beast, use the -3 and put Craterhoof Behemoth into play, but he might.
I believe he has both of them in his hand.
Oh boy.
To be fair, he's already quite ahead on the board. He doesn't, that probably doesn't need the combo, but I believe he has both.
Well, you see the future Hall of Famer considering his options for the turn. What to do? Is it time to go for the combo part of his deck, try to get this game more worth, or can he just keep serving with 2 12/12 Wolfir Silverhearts?
Well, if he has the combo, that's 38 trample. I can't imagine there's too many things he would want to do differently.
I think Huey's going to agree with you. He's going to put this into play. He's going to -1 this. Craterhoof Behemoth trigger's going to happen. Let's get big.
And
you see Nourain's going to go, what exactly? How does this work here? How bad is this for me? He does have a Putrefy.
So hitting 1 Silverheart, that takes a fair amount of damage off the board. And this is probably in response to the Craterhoof trigger that he would do this.
It doesn't look that way. It looks like the creatures have already come sideways. So I don't know if he had missed the trigger or not. Yeah.
Oh wait, no. He would want to do that because now they can't pair.
Yeah.
Right,
so there's some interesting timing there, right?
Yeah.
When you want to pull the trigger on that.
Either so it'd be a 9. It would still be a swing of 15.
Yeah. So you're going to see Nourain down to 8 here. Either way, it's going to be a boatload of damage. Now Nourain has to overcome a 5/5, a 4/4, and that Garrett Caller Beast.
And I think one of the reasons Huey was a little tentative on whether or not he wanted to make that play is now it's very possible he's going to lose the Garrett because he didn't leave back a blocker or he didn't plus it. Nourain will have the opportunity to attack with the Beast token. He does still have to make sure that he survives the turn. So, he's not out of the woods yet.
So Nourain has a copy of Rakdos' Return in his hand, also has a Bonfire of the Dam and a land. None of those cards all that great right now. He can finish off that Garrett Primal Hunter, as you did mention, but none of the cards all that impressive right now in Nourain's hand. You see him going to take a look at Jensen's graveyard, consider his options here, but he's in a world of trouble right now, Matthias.
Well, he is 1 land short of being able to trade off that Beast token with using Kessig Wolfron and then being able to use Bonfire to take care of the Garou. I think that's his next removal spell is going to be Block and Wolf on the blocker. The problem is that if Huey has 1 more creature, that play also won't work.
So, Rakdos' Return is going to take care of the Garrett Caller Beast. Absent Pilgrim bites the dust. We'll see what Jensen does draw for the turn. If he draws a creature, he can pair up with the Silverheart, but he does not draw a creature, so in comes the Behemoth, in comes the Wolfir Silverheart, going to block their take 4.
It has... No, it doesn't...
Nope, it does not have trample.
It just has haste. It gives itself trample.
Correct. You would think something like that does have trample. Take a look at that thing.
Right.
But it just does have haste, so it's quick. It's at its strongest. There is a Hut Match that fells the draw this turn, it looks like, but he is going to concede the game. So, William Huey Jensen does win game number 1 over Kiyan Nourain. Elves able to take down John. We weren't sure if it could happen. Matthias, the thing that you brought up did occur.
Yeah, he had that kind of hand actually that I thought would be really good in the matchup, where he had all those kill spells. It turns out, it might be that he needs to ignore the mana creatures. I'm not sure with the strategy. Originally I thought you could attack the mana creatures and then slow them down and then, outclass the late game threats.
Sure.
It seemed like that game Kiyan really was not able to. So now the question is, is he that Tragic Set? Is that supposed to happen on a mana creature?
Yep.
The Bonfires we know are supposed to go at mana creatures, but I mean, as scary as it sounds, maybe he's supposed to let him have the Archdruids to just putrefy all the big creatures and hope that that's enough.
And hope maybe that he doesn't draw Garrett Caller of Beast instead. If he draws Hydras...
That's just a problem.
Yeah, if he draws Hydras and Silverhearts, I think that Kiyan can just kind of answer those for days. But if it's ever Garrett Caller of Beast that he was ramping into, then it's probably lights out. So I feel like it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation for him.
Right.
It's premium time, my friends. And if you guys have never played before, we'll explain the rules again for you very briefly. I'm going to ask you guys a question. Hashtag your answer on Twitter with the hashtag of SCG Premium. Again, it is about accuracy, not speed, as we'll be giving away and announcing the winner at the conclusion of our semifinals. Again, just going to ask you a pretty easy question early this morning. Make sure you do on Twitter, hashtag your answer with the hashtag of SCG Premium. And again, we'll be announcing the answer and the winner, at the end of the round.
Right.
So, in the mono green deck that is being played by Huey Jensen, he is splashing white for Gaffney Township and a 2 of white card. If you're able to name the 2 copies of the white card that he is splashing for, I'll give you a hint, it's green and white. Hashtag your answer with the hashtag SCG Premium. And again, we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinals. Pretty easy question again, splashing white for Gaffney Township and a 2 of green-white creature. Hashtag SCG Premium for your answer.
It's interesting, it's not typically the kind of card you'd expect to be splashing for.
No, not at
usually
all.
you splash for these really high-impact cards. This is just kind of like splashing for some quality.
Yeah, you know, it's definitely a good card in a vacuum, so it's definitely not a bad card you're splashing for, but he is taking just a small dabble into the white. So, again, hashtag your answer, SCG Premium. We announce the winner at the conclusion of the semifinals as we're going to take a look at the sideboards here. We'll start with Nourain's because he certainly does have some tools to get himself back into this game. A card that really does interest me here, Matthias, is Barter and Blood ×2 because it is often a card that you want for Bant Hexproof, but it seems like it's a whole lot better here where we saw that double Wolf or Silverheart draw would have destroyed that.
Well, I think what I like about it is that it's a black removal spell and not a red one. So we saw Bonfire the Damned was a little weak there.
It's really good at killing mana creatures, but that's all it's going to do in this matchup. All the things that Huey plays are far too large to get Bonfire. So what I like about Barter and Blood is that it is that sweeper that can actually sweep Huey's creatures.
Yeah. You see the other options on the screen there. Golgari Charm, an additional one. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come in. Same thing for the Tragic Slip as well. Curse of Death Soul, I do kind of like here. It is expensive, though. And then Liliana the Veils ×2. I think if he is able to take care of those mana creatures, then Liliana the Veil can start ticking up. And then when Huey does play a Colonial Hydra, it'll probably be the only creature that he does have in play. And then Liliana can actually tick down to take care of that. So I actually like that card a lot this matchup.
So what I do like a lot of these. I think the Golgari Charm might be an upgrade to Bonfire of the Damned. I don't know if he wants all 4 Bonfires. Really, they only kill mana creatures. I completely agree though with the Barter and Bloods that he'll use. The Tragic Slip's another removal spell that can kill anything, and I think Liliana is great in the matchup.
That's do I.
You know, remember Huey doesn't have that many threats. If you answer all his threats the first time around, then you win. We saw there Huey had 2 Silverhearts, a Garruk, and a Crater of Behemoth. Sure, that's a lot of stuff, but that's 4 cards. If Kiyan had been able to answer all 4 of them, he probably would have been able to win the game. Curse of Death's Hold, I think, is probably just too expensive for him to use. By the time he would cast it, I don't know if it does anything anymore.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way about it. It could be more of a trap card to sideboard in this matchup. As we take a look at Jensen's sideboard, 3 Acidic Slime, 4 Strangler Guys, 3 Tree of Redemption, 2 Ranger's Guile, and 3 Garrett Relentless. Of these cards, I think 3 Acidic Slime is an easy one, and then the 2 Ranger Guiles is the interesting one, and the one I want to ask you about, because it can just simply counter a removal spell, but is it worth it to sideboard in a card that basically says counter your Putrefy, counter your Dreadboard?
I think so. The Acidic Slime, I'm only lukewarm on in the matchup.
Okay.
Against a Jund deck, which is trying to remove all your cards, you need to make sure that every card demands a removal spell.
Okay.
And Acidic Slime doesn't. It's annoying because Kiyan will lose a land when he plays it, but Kiyan doesn't have to kill the Acidic Slime, and I think that's why I wouldn't want to use it. Ranger's Guile, what's interesting about that one is that say you're attacking with a Colonial Hydra, 1 Ranger's Guile can just make that swing lethal.
Yeah.
You know, it's not you're just playing as a counter spell, it's because when you counter a removal spell with it, your opponent might be taking 10.
Sure. So those are the options there for Jensen and the options there for Nourain. A quick update for you guys really quickly. David Reed against Chad Castle. Reed, the 2 seed, does win game number 1 as he was on the play against Castle. So in our Jund mirror, the 2 seed is currently ahead, but they've got at least 1 more game to play. And it wouldn't surprise me if they actually did go to a 3rd and final game to see who's going to play in the finals against the winner of this matchup between Nourain and Jensen. Someone at home on Twitter, Jay Wheats, asking, all that Elfsec needs now is Deathrite Shamans. Am I right? Mr. Jay Wheats, you are wrong. He knows that I hate Deathrite Shaman. Keep that card out of this deck. Please, no.
I mean, if he likes the mana accelerant so much, you know, that could be mana creatures number 13 through 16.
No, keep it out of here. I hate Deathrite Shaman. See Nourain going to draw his opening 7. He's happy. Jensen going to immediately go back to the well. And as you mentioned, ramp decks, they're not the best at mulliganing. I know in my experience playing some Primeval Titan, the Kessig Wolf from Primeval Titan deck last year, you know, you could take one mulligan, you couldn't take a second
you really
one.
can't take a second mulligan. At that point, it's because all your ramp cards become very bad. You know, you've had that game probably where you play a turn 2 Farseek, but a turn 3, you know, you'll play a Farseek, but you won't actually have the land, so it feels like you're just paying mana to make your land drop. Your deck's a lot less impressive when that happens.
Yeah. So again, I think that Jensen can afford to take a single mulligan, but a second one makes it so incredibly difficult for him to win. If there's any consolation being able to take a mulligan right now, it is that he's on the draw, so he can kind of undo it. But that's about the only consolation.
Another option, when looking at Kiyan's board, there's a lot of ways he can go. I mean, I think he still is turning into, once again, that more removal spell-heavy deck. If he's really worried about Garruk Caller Beasts, he can use Pithing Needle for it. That seems rather narrow, but you know, it's another option that's available to him.
I mean, I think I would be scared of Garruk Caller Beasts. I feel like it's just a game-winning card if it resolves. You know, he can have a proactive answer to it, or he could just have a card, or he could just try to accomplish basically never allowing Jensen to get to it, as Nourain's going to start off with a Stomping Ground. Jensen with a Forest into one of those mana accelerants. The question is
he
which
has
one.
a bunch of Avacyn's Pilgrims here.
Okay.
I think 3 of them. Also note that Huey's boarded in his Garruk Relentless in this matchup.
There is the God Draw of a turn 2 Farseek on the play there for Nourain.
Alright, so my guess would be the reason behind that one would be basically that he's trying to make more threats that are difficult for Kiyan to answer, and that would be why he'd want the Garruk Relentless.
Yeah. So there's an Arbor Elf there for Jensen. He's going to pass the turn back. So he does have 4 mana, potentially 5 mana moving into the following turn, as Nourain's going to shuffle his deck after resolving that Farseek. So we'll see what Nourain has on turn number 3. Does he have a Hunt Match of the Fells? Does he have an Olivia Valdarin? Or does he have some removal spells? As you see, he does have Olivia in his hand.
Yeah, well, what we were seeing, and this is what we were talking about when ramp decks are on the mulligan, is that it's really hard for them to still push that mana advantage. We see that Huey has 2 creatures, he has 2 lands. It looks like he's going to make this really big mana advantage, but there's some problems going on. He doesn't have any more lands in hand right now, which leaves him really soft to a card like Bonfire of the Damned or Golgari Charm.
Overgrown Tomb going to come into play tapped here for Nourain. Let's see what he's going to do with the mana. Doesn't look like he has a lot of removal spells in his hand. He might just put Jensen to the Olivia Valdarin test. That's what he's going to do.
Well, and this is pretty good for Huey in that his mana creatures got to live.
Yeah. The problem here for Huey is that he does not have an additional land, so he's still stuck on that 4 mana. Dodges a Bonfire of the Damned for now, but if there is a removal spell like this one, he's going to get set back to the Stone Age, and that's exactly what Golgari Charm does.
Freshly drawn Golgari Charm is really just backbreaking for him. You know, it's a double Stone Ring here. Huey doesn't have any more plays until 5 mana, I don't believe. Or does he has more mana creatures he can go with.
So he's sandbagging.
He's sandbagging too. Yeah, he only wanted to get 2 for 1 instead of 4 for 1 by the possible Golgari Charm or Bonfire of the Damned.
Smart play by the Hall of Famer here, as Nourain is going to finish resolving the Farseek, shuffle up the deck, and we'll see what he has to play on his following turn.
Yeah, it looks like Huey does have, I think, a Garruk and a Colonian Hydra as his 2 remaining cards.
Yeah.
A large Garruk, a 6 mana one.
Yep. The Caller of Beast is ready to be deployed if Jensen can find a 6th mana source. But more importantly, what's Nourain going to do on his turn? Is he going to take care of more of these mana accelerants, or is he just going to slam down a boring old threat like a Thragtusk, which oddly enough, I think would make Jensen incredibly happy.
Yeah, I mean, Thragtusk I think is really great. Is not a good play for Kiyan right now. It's not really going to impact the board very much. He either wants to attack these mana creatures, or he wants to, have a lot of kill spells.
So here's a Hunt Match to the Fells, 2 life and a Wolf token incoming, but if you're Jensen, you're happy. There's a Woodland Cemetery, and if there's no removal spell, which there isn't, can he draw the 6th mana source? He does, and now you see him go into the tank, because is it time to cast the Colonial Hydra, or do you play the Garruk Caller Beast?
Well, I think It's really tough. I think you want to go with the Hydra. You just want to challenge the Jund player to kill everything you do. Remember, because if he can't kill it, then it's a 2-turn clock.
Well, there is your Hydra. That's the option there for Jensen. So he is going to play that and pass the turn back. And I believe Nourain only has 1 card left in his hand right now. So he's staring at Colonial Hydra in the face. And can he beat it as he draws a card?
Well, the cool thing about Colonial Hydra is that it doesn't just double the number of counters on itself, even though that's what you normally see it do. It has this great interaction with Gavany Township that we saw Huey use in the Swiss of the tournament, where if he puts Gavany Township's his entire team in swings, it'll actually double the counters on all his mana creatures as well.
So if Huey does attempt to use the Gavany Township, he can actually make those things into 3/3s, and then they'll just keep scaling up. You see that Nourain is going to read the Hydra, and it's, I think, worth his time to do so to see exactly what this Busted Mythic does. A lot of hype about this card in M14 when it was spoiled as being one of the best green threats at 5 mana we've ever seen. Brian Kibler naturally excited about this card. I think the hype is worth it.
I mean, the Hydra, yeah, it's gonna kill in 2 attacks. That's just how the card works.
You know, the card reminded me of a card like Spectral Force, Lieutenant Broccoli, from many years ago, but it just feels like it's so much better than that.
We actually talked about that yesterday. So, Spectral Force is this card from Future Sight that's up. It was just an 8/8 trample for 5. It was like Spectral Bears. It didn't untap your opponent, didn't have a swamp. And there were decks that would play this card and then, play other cards just to try to cheat it, just to try to untap it. They felt that an 8/8 trample for 5 was so good. And I think that just speaks loads about how Colonial Hydra is just even better than that. It untaps itself and it gets bigger than 8/8.
Nourain's going to play a Dragon Skull Summit, and then he's going to pass the turn back. His last card in his hand is a Thragtusk. So Huntmaster of the Fells is going to flip into Ravager of the Fells. There's a trigger. There goes Avacyn's Pilgrim. No activations or anything from Jensen as he's going to draw a card. He finds, I believe, a Wolfir Silverheart. I believe, Matthias.
It's Silverheart or an Archdruid. I think it was one of the 2.
Okay.
Either way, this game is now about the Colonial Hydra, and this is why it's such a powerful card. In addition to things like Girlcrawler Beasts, is it only in this matchup it's only takes 1 threat.
Yep.
If Kiyan lets 1 threat through, then it's the game.
So what's going to happen here now is you see Jensen is going to say attack step, attack with the Hydra, trigger on the stack, activate my Gavany Township, put a counter on the Hydra, put it up to 5, counter on my Avacyn's Pilgrim, put it up to 1. Let's double the counter. So I have a 10/10 Hydra, I've got a 3/3 Avacyn's Pilgrim, and now it's on you to draw something completely insane. Nourain draws his card. It's a Blood Crypt, and he's going to concede the game.
Get it.
So William Huey Jensen is going to move on to the finals, dispatching another Jund deck. Mono Green Elves not scared of the Jund menace. He'll be playing us at least 1 more Jund deck this weekend, as our other semifinals match is between David Reed and Chad Castle in the Jund Mirror. Can he do it 1 more time?
After watching that game, I would think that I really like the strategy that he's using against Jund decks. And I would say he's a favorite to do it again. It seems that right now in their configurations, Jund really has to hit all their draws perfectly to deal with this Elves deck. We saw Kiyan really in control there. He Golgari Charm 2 mana creatures. He had a lot of the game plan he wanted. He had an Olivia, but he slipped up once in letting a Colonial Hydra through, and that one screw up is the entire game.
Yeah, and we have a result very quickly from our